Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode of Co-Creating with AI. I'm Martin, and with me is Rasmus, as always. How are you today, Rasmus?
Pretty good. Had a nice morning, and it's been like a massive, I don't know, storm is probably a little
Yeah,
bit, but like a little bit of exaggerating, but it's been this like level of wind where like the house almost shakes a little bit in
yeah,
the night. So that was exciting. Always like we have a lot of trees around here, so like
cool.
a little
Yeah, it's
concerned.
been super windy here as well,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
but I've been so focused on work actually the past couple of days. I was in Italy last week, and now when I'm back, I've been at my computer like from 8 in the morning until midnight for 2 days now straight, and I've been barely outside. But yeah,
Good choice.
it's the fall is upon us
Yeah,
for real now.
no doubt.
Italy was fine, 26 degrees and 21 in the sea, so we could swim and stay in the sun and have a really good time.
Cool, happy to hear. So what are we going
So
to talk about today?
yeah, we talked about the idea of having real world business use cases of AI as a theme and see what comes up. And I'm pretty sure that you have some stories to tell there from Multiply, and maybe I can dig up something as well. Um but what comes top of mind of you when you think about business use cases for AI?
I think what's interesting to see is that we've so quickly gone to the point that pretty much everyone I talk to and everyone they talk to are thinking about how to, or like active, not only thinking about, like actively trying to bring AI into their
Yeah.
businesses. And as a friend of mine who helps companies within like actually do this, like as a
Mm.
consultant, he divides it in like people, process, and product. So like being more productive as people, and then automating processes, and then of course bring it into the product, which is not
Mm.
relevant for all companies, but for a lot of software companies.
Mm.
So I mean, let's look into there and also look into different ways that they have at approaching this.
Mm.
And I think maybe, yeah, go on.
I just want to like a thought that came up is that one really strong reoccurring meme almost that has been that is floating everywhere is this notion of like AI won't replace you, but someone that uses AI will.
Mm,
And I think that really maybe gets to people that individuals, even if organizations are not seeking AI as a solution, then individuals are like, how can I as a person like an individual leverage AI in my daily work, because I don't want to be replaced. I don't want to, and I I don't want to miss out on this productivity boost AI can give me. So
yeah,
I
it's
think,
interesting.
yeah, I think that can be a driver as well for adoption, like the individual aspect.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you pretty much mentioned both like sort of fear and hope there.
Yeah.
Like fear of being replaced or being outcompeted, and the other one is the hope of actually there are still a lot of things we don't want to do on a daily
Yeah.
basis.
Yeah.
There is so much repetitive work where we
Mm.
feel that we don't
So
really, if we could choose, someone else would do it for us. And I think that's capturing the imagination of people actually. And
yeah.
that's what I'm feeling. There is an actual excitement on like not only within like the tech nerdy kind of
Mm.
communities, but like just anyone working with the computer really.
And when there is both the carrot and the stick present, then the behavior will it can actually change, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. I also think we're at the point, and I think this might be a good segue into giving examples and exploring the
Mm.
different ways that businesses are doing this. Is that like quite a lot of people are using ChatGPT. Like
Yes.
it's I don't know like how like what the latest numbers are. I don't know if they shared it, but like if I just talk to people, there are most people who are like relatively digital, spend significant time in front of their computer,
Mm.
are experimenting with ChatGPT.
They are, yeah, almost every day. Like if you ask people, and they're open to like sharing. they're using ChatGPT almost every day. That's what I find. And like without being this AI nerdy AI optimist, they people are really using it for their businesses and personal life.
But what I think is interesting, yeah, I agree, is that I think that we're at the point, at least a lot of people I speak with, who also feel the limitation
Mm.
of ChatGPT, of being limited to do this for me now and then do this for me. And especially for like more complex workflows that requires multiple steps, it takes a bit too much time and
Mm.
effort, especially if you want to keep it organized, and especially for companies who have multiple like a lot of different processes where they want to implement it. So like maybe I can start there. Just the which is something we provide in Multiply. Of course, we
Mm.
have you know one of our pilot customers is a very well known like marketing and brand agency, and the interesting thing with that type of business, and I think this applies to many businesses, especially when they are 10, 20 people plus, in this case maybe like around 100, uh, is that they have like a lot of different workflows for like a marketing and brand agency. A lot of them are around content analysis, content production. They produce brand material or advertising material or
Mm.
content to get engagement or SEO for their clients. And
Mm.
what's interesting there is then they have multiple workflows, multiple clients. So that you like to organize that efficiently with ChatGPT becomes a hassle. So I'll give an
Oh, that sounds like
example.
a nightmare. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
definitely.
and just like
Yeah.
keep that organized, right?
Mm.
I mean, just for us keeping our workflows pre-multiply organized in with prompts in ChatGPT are it takes time
Mm.
and it takes like a lot of effort.
Yeah.
So one example of that, just like from our end, is just multi-step workflows. So a process that has only one step
Mm.
is, you might not even call that a process, right?
Mm.
And I still think ChatGPT is great for like those, like just very like you do something once, you ask something once, you just like get an answer, get help with something. But as soon as there's something you want to do repetitively, and
Mm.
as soon as there's something that has multiple steps. So one example is taking, let's say the content of a new client and creating a brand voice. So actually capturing how they communicate, and of course you can, based on that, iterate on that. But let's say
Mm.
this client is happy with the way they communicate, but they haven't necessarily formulated like a clear brand voice. So that's very easy to, for example, multiply, link in, the like web pages of content or files describing the brand voice, and then generate a description that the AI can understand.
Mm.
And then take that for each client and create, say, a new piece of content for SEO or for advertising. And then based on that, for example, take that and repurpose that for different social media posts
Mm.
across different platforms. Involved in that are, you know, I don't know, 10, 20 prompts, uh,
Yeah.
which should all contain the results of
Of
the
the
previous,
previous
yeah,
step. Yeah.
or add in some new level of information that is needed to make,
Mm.
that part of the process work well. So it's really like the complexity when you think about different data that comes into different workflow, the different instructions, the prompts to generate one piece like some output, and the
Mm.
specification of that output so that it actually keeps the format that you want, and then being
Mm.
able to use that in the next step. So just those like waterfall kind of processes, I see like that no code tools such as Multiply, but also such as make.com,
Mm.
which is the former Integromat, etc., are starting to be quite adopted
Mm.
by most companies. I mean, maybe some of the really forefront ones, like top 10 companies, they set up their own in-house AI teams to really build out very custom software.
Mm.
Because they have big development teams, it's in their nature. But my like current hypothesis is that for most companies, uh, you know, they will use no code tools to implement
Mm.
AI, or of course they will use in one tool they already use, or a specific tool for a specific workflow that they get, they will just sign up for that. So I think that we're really for the broad mass market of businesses, uh, the kind of the no code tools are really having their day in the sunlight,
mm,
and now with AI, because it adds such a an added level of value,
mm,
like obvious value, replacing repetitive and boring work. That I think was not as obvious in the previous generation of, say, using Integromat or Zapier to connect different tools so that data flows. It was like less obvious because it was still not connected to output. It was sort of helping you get better like overview and input, but it wasn't actually producing output for you, whether that's social media content or a product plan based on customer interview data. So I think that's like a big step I'm seeing. People actually making the effort to go from um, one step kind of prompts to multi-step workflows, and how no code tools come in there to sort of
mm.
facilitate that.
So I want to highlight one significant thing that I'm hearing when you in what you're describing with the multi-step workflows that Multiply offers, and also Make.com, is that they are repeatable, and they are also therefore improvable. Sorry, my voice is giving out. um, and what that, like, I mean, there are a different class of services which also has multi-step um, workflows, but that are new each time, which is like God mode, which is a very easy adoptable service. You can try it for anything. There's also Perplexity, which has repeatable workflow. But basically, what they've done is that they've built a service um, which is like ChatGPT, but that has one single repeatable research workflow that you can enable. It's like there's a switch when you prompt it, you enable their copilot. They call it the copilot or not. Like that's a just on off switch, and if it's on, it's a workflow, like a chain of prompts, where it first thinks about how can I understand this question the best, and then what should I research on the web, and then it presents the results, and then from the web, and then it generates the answers to the question, and that's the Copilot workflow of Perplexity AI, and it's super powerful, but it's only one single workflow. So with Multiply and Make.com, for example, you get the power of unlimited number of workflows like that, but that you also can build yourself. You design every step for yourself or for your organization, and it's co um, co-created among many people potentially. But it's also that it can constantly evolve and be improved over and over.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. So like if I would like, I'm not sure if this is correct frame, but there's like one option which is set up your workflow, design it yourself, make.com, multiply, etc. Um, and there's the God mode or perplexity, where the AI sort of has a more general abstract workflow,
Mm,
and then um, plans the
yeah.
steps it needs to take to perform it, and then
Mm,
you can repeat that. So I think that's like also like a very like interesting development, which is we're of course also exploring, but where you hand off designing the
mm,
workflows to these models. And I think both God mode and perplexity are quite interesting examples where you just provide some primitives, like it
mm,
has it always takes a few steps, planning in terms of tasks, and then it can execute those tasks both in terms of like just generation, or like going out and searching and fetching data, or asking for data you need to provide. In Perplexity you can, for example, upload files, and then it sort of continues performing the workflow. So I
Mm.
think it's like a very interesting exploration there, and I don't think it's obvious yet if we're at the level of agency, like in these like more agentic apps,
Mm.
where you can hand off the design of workflows to the AI, or if we're still at the level where you need to like be very specific and set it up yourself to get the good results.
Yeah.
Uh, but I'm looking forward to explore. Do you have a sense of that, and like what have you seen come up lately?
Yeah. So yeah, there's also the autogen, or the many agents, the swarm of agents that has been popular lately with Microsoft's autogen framework. However, what comes to mind is that exactly what you're saying, that it is human created workflows that so far has been proven to create repeatable business value. I think God mode has seen a huge popularity, but as you said before, we don't know if it has staying power yet. And but what does have staying power is the sort of human made, um, optimized, continuously improved upon workflow of perplexity or make.com or multiply, and where the human is in the loop in the case of multiply and perplexity, and you can run the workflow with new data in every time. You're sort of watching it run. You can upload files, you can prompt it differently, tweak your input. And but make.com um, has sort of a set, and it fetches an input, it gets an input from somewhere, it runs a process which is pretty much the same every time, and there's no human in the loop. Maybe there's a human providing input, triggering something, but the process running is sort of a side effect of something else happening in the world, or if it's on a schedule. But and with multiply is sort of bringing in both of those worlds, where um, in the end we aim to have both scheduled um, workflows and human triggered workflows. So um, but the business value is definitely in the human created workflows, what we can see so far. The very agentic AI planned workflows are a bit more hit and miss, I feel.
Yeah, and they're a bit more one-off as well. It's like I think like one of the cool examples that is quite old is before even I think it's even pre-LLM, like Google Assistant, calling up a hairdresser and booking a time for you.
Hmm.
I think they've probably updated it since Bard, etc. And then with one of the first demos of ChatGPT with plugins was plan a trip and then book it for me
Hmm.
using I don't know, booking.com plugin, etc. So those are still like in my at least frame one-off workflows. But what I think is interesting when you just talked like about make.com, etc., is there is multi-step process, right? Like a repeatable process. It could also even be like just a repeating one, like a very simple process, right? But
Yeah.
being able to run that
Yeah.
efficiently. But there's also the point of like repetitive input. So that was a repetitive instruction, what we said. And then there's repetitive input. So like, and what I mean by that is maybe you have a set of data that you always want to interact with,
Hmm.
even though the interactions are one off. So I think it's quite interesting how we're seeing the um, chatbot for X, so to say, the chat
Hmm.
GPT for X, really take off.
Hmm.
And like a couple of examples, and one of them I'll be less specific with because it's a friend of mine starting it, and one is public, so I'll take that as well. But the first one is just there's a specific industry that has a lot of regulation, and like the kind of the amount of regulation that you can't know, even if you're like the lawyer in the field or you're the
Hmm.
like expert in that field, you don't know all this regulation. So what he did is just take all that regulation and take one of these no code tools where you can create custom chatbots and uploaded all those documents and the service then automatically ran embeddings on them, and then he specified a simple chatbot in order to only answer questions based on that data in the embeddings, like the data that had been embedded. And he built that in like a couple of weeks, and then when he demoed it to people in that field, and they were like, "Oh, we've been looking for this question for like ages. Been discussing in the team. We haven't found it." And then in the demo, I mean, this may be a lucky shot, but then he just typed it into the chatbot, and the answer came.
Wow.
So I think that's also like a very interesting thing here. Is like sometimes it's process that's repetitive, the instruction step,
Mm.
and especially when there's multi-step, it seems to be like a lot of business value in there that ChatGPT can't serve. But um, you also have this when you have like a specific set of data, whether that's for an industry, like in the case I described, or for a specific company. And sometimes I think it might be both. So we have there's a new Swedish startup. I think they're called Leia that is working one of the leading law agencies to just provide like an assistant for lawyers. And there's a bunch of these tools, right? But I mean, in that case, I can definitely see it. Both being having all the regulation, all the
Mm.
relevant legalities for a specific jurisdiction embedded, but also being trained, and there we could dive into how to best do that. But I'm not sure if that's relevant on the specific way that this law firm creates their documents, their different templates, their different workflows for going through with the client, and there
Mm.
they can probably automate a lot of at least paralegal work, taking input from the client, gathering it, doing the necessary research, finding the reference cases, etc., and then providing a draft of the document that the customer needs, the
Mm.
agreement, for example. So I think there's really like both in this like having the right data for a specific workflow, and then being able to whether that's these examples I gave, or the example I gave in the beginning with having the brand voice of a customer,
Mm.
uh, uh, and then being able to define the processes. And because both of these are like more and more being provided in no code tools, I really think that the only like the main limiting factor right now is knowledge and expertise
Yeah.
in actually doing this. And uh, my impression is that it requires a lot less knowledge and expertise than people think. So
Mm.
that's the only like if, for the people listening to this, I'd encourage to really experiment with like no code tools, because there are a lot of things you can build very very quickly with barely any or zero engineering expertise,
Mm.
like being a developer. At
Mm.
least that's my sense. What do you like? Is that also when you're playing around with like the different things out there?
Yeah, and what actually comes to mind as well is the actual engineering workflow that I have now with Cursor.so being my main tool for writing code. And they have this, and Cursor.so is a fork of VS Code where they have integrated GPT-4 right into the code editor. And one paradigm that is super powerful that they have implemented is that you can very easily ask it to index a certain documentation that you need in order to complete your code. So there are, of course, thousands and thousands of open source projects out there, each with their own extensive documentation. This is pretty much like the super massive reference material that you talked about in your business use case, where it is not possible for one human to know about all these libraries in detail. So what Cursor.so allows me to do is to import a new documentation that is on the web, where I give it as a URL, and it actually indexes that URL and everything below it. It follows all the link, but it stays within that URL structure. So if it's a subsection of a website, it will not index the entire website, just that subsection where the relevant part of the documentation is. So and then after it's done that once, I can at mention that. I give it a marker, I tag it basically, and I can at mention that specific documentation. So for some projects, maybe there's an API and there's a quick start tutorial, and then I can index them separately and give them different tags. And I can at mention the API reference, and I can at mention the quick start tutorial, and the AI will bring that into the context. So it is sort of a at mention becomes a tool for context curation when I'm co-creating with AI inside Cursor, and that becomes super powerful, and would be an extremely powerful paradigm inside Multiply as well. If with at, if I could at mention, we have that as well with linking documents. It's super easy to set up a link to a new document, in the just to curate the context for the AI.
Yeah, I mean that is interesting. So in that sense, it's also being able to dynamically like build the context, right? Say,
Yes.
as a human, this is what is relevant in order for you to perform this task for me
Mm.
or to perform this business process. So and these things are like, yeah, I mean, they're out there right now. I saw some
Yeah,
survey of Copilot users that, you know, they wouldn't want to live about without it. Like people actually start using Copilot to code. They, you know,
definitely.
never want to go back. And I
Yeah.
think that's going to be like like just getting back to the start, like what motivates people here. I think when people really like, you know, experience something a little bit magical
Mm.
in their work, they don't want to go back. And that's why I think for people who actually quickly get some real value out of ChatGPT tends to stick.
Mm.
And the same thing with these other tools that are, of course, much closer to the user if it's in their, you know, developer software or if it's in something they already use on a daily basis. Uh, but so what comes next? Do you think? Like in order to, I mean, we're going to round off soon, but
Mm.
like, what do you think is like what's boiling, so to say? What's the next thing you think that's likely to happen um, to bring this out to more people? Is it just like a steady flow now of people discovering it and trying it, or like what do you think is uh, the catalyst that will bring it out to more people?
I think there is a big sort of catch-up effect coming. Um, there's been an initial resistance because AI is something unknown, and then there's the threshold of knowledge that we have to get over. But now all the consultancy firms have done that work, and they are starting to bring the value of AI to their clients. So that becomes a vehicle for all organizations to transform into an AI paradigm. And so what is the first thing to come? I don't actually think the biggest thing now is going to be further um, further development of tools, but that the existing tools, which are actually good enough to create real world business value, that they are going to explode in popularity, and the AI is going to see a lot more use, just from the tools that already exist. So for me, that's something exciting. And then in the what I look forward to in tools development is, the notion of AI planning more, like planning, being a bit more agentic, planning its work, still with the human in the loop, perhaps. Um, but and then I also want to mention, since you brought up GitHub Copilot, that GitHub Copilot was, I think it was one of the first services that was actually deployed in the real world with really big user value, and it has pulled off something like a magic trick that no other AI service have done, which is to become an ambient part of the workflows. Because you with GitHub Copilot, you work in your ordinary tool, and it just provides suggestions that are high quality, and you can just accept the suggestion with tab key or reject it by just keep typing yourself. And and that is such a huge you like UX value that it has. The user doesn't have to call upon it before it to be active. You activate it once, and then you get the value continuously in all of your work, and you just get this unconscious productivity boost that you then never want to live without. And that has um, not been replicated in many other AI tools that come up, that you see the value without having to do further work.
Yeah, I think that's actually like maybe a good point to end on. But for me, it sort of comes in two buckets where I'm most excited and where I think most of the value is going to come from. And the first one is what you're saying. It's basically, I mean, what you're using is VS Code, right? It's very like well used product, but now there's a fork of it. So it's a new product, but that takes something very existing, but makes AI ambient in it, right? And I mean, maybe VS Code could have done it, etc., right? Or some other existing editor.
Yeah,
But they
with
really,
Copilot, it's actually a plugin to VS Code as well. So you just have to install the plugin, and then it's there in the original product as well.
okay, and what they did
Mm.
is add GPT-4 as well, so you could use that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And with Cursor, it's actually, yeah, with their innovations, you actually have to call upon them. So they GitHub Copilot still works in Cursor the same way as in this VS Code, but you also can call upon GPT-4 to code for you when you want it.
Mm. But it's interesting because like the sense I'm getting at there is that there will be one category of either existing or new products, and that will just be I mean, like a result of execution. If it's an existing product or a new product, that basically provides something very similar to what you're already using, or within something you're already using, and makes AI a very natural part of it. That becomes a boost. Or it's the kind of no-code tools where you can build on top of the products you already use. So like and get new value by building AI on top of it, existing data sets or existing tools. So I think um, there's going to be like I think maybe that's a different division. It's probably not exhaustive, but of like custom tooling, which a lot of companies are going to need, which was the second category that I said, and then just like existing tooling. Used like people have used code editors for ages, right? And now
Mm.
there's Cursor, which was a hit because it just did something a little bit better and
Mm.
made AI a little bit, more natural to use. I mean, there are probably more categories, but at least for me, I feel like in on the topic of like how it comes out to businesses, I think that's those are like the two main venues that I see right now. And then of course I'm also really excited about how these both like how the AI can have more agency within them. Either in designing the workflows, performing the workflows, or being part of your existing tool. Coding with you. I mean, imagine when Cursor, where the agent is like, you were working on this. You want me to try this out and do this part for you?
Hmm.
And then you're like, okay. And then, or it just does it and then shows you something. And then you're like, okay, wow.
Yeah.
So I think, but we talked a lot about that before, but that's at least the way I see it. Do you have any like final thoughts before we round off?
No, I think that sums it up. And the most important part for me is the actual adoption of these tools. Like, we can build all the tools and cool technology in the world, but it's when people actually start using it at scale that we see value creation happen.
Cool. Okay. Thanks a lot, Martin. It's been fun.
Thanks, Erasmus. See you next time.
Yeah. See you. And thank you to the listener. I'll do that this time
Yeah.
for staying with us to the end. If you have any questions or thoughts, you can email us at Rasmus or Martin at multiply.co. Yeah. Have a great day.